Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast. And we are kicking off the week with a 6-game slate here. Not my favorite to have to look at right now. A few teams on a back-to-back. We got 3 of them. But we are bringing you best bets in this video. We've found some good stuff. There's a couple games that we've got, some well-rested teams for sure. So we're taking a look at what we know here with best bets. We've also got some play-up props up in another video for you. So make sure to like and subscribe to that page and continue to follow along all season with us. Also head to thelines.com and use everything we've got under that NBA tab on the site there, including that prop finder tool to make sure you're getting the best juice back on all these bets that you are making this NBA season. Nate, let's go ahead and run into your first best bet for tonight.
Yeah, it's an 8-game slate, just
Is it?
FYI. Yeah, but
Wow.
yeah, I mean, the last game on the slate is the one I'm looking at here, Hawks at Kings.
Oh, it is.
And I'll go over 237.5. I know it's crept up a couple points, but I still think this is a get right spot for the Kings. I mean, if you want to take Hawks plus 8.5, I don't blame you. Like, it makes sense to do stars out, bets up. With Trae Young out here, like DeJounte will just take over that number one facilitating role. They should be fine here. The Kings haven't covered against anybody, but it's the extended rest that worries me in that sense, that the Kings haven't played since last Thursday. They're 3-0 on 3 days rest this season. Those games have been incredibly high scoring. They've scored about 123. They've gotten about 28 free throw attempts. They've allowed about 28 free throw attempts. So obviously trending over. When they do win, like, you expect them to win this game. It's just a question on the spread, which is why we're like, no, Hawks worst team in the league against the spread. Like, we don't want to mess with that necessarily. But when the Kings win, they score 126 versus 108 in losses, and you can almost mark it like clockwork when they're on when they're on short rest, right? That they're going to score like 99. I mean, some of that's the matchup. They play the Clippers, they play the Pelicans. Their offense gets shut down, but at extended rest at home. This is certainly going to trend over when you look at the numbers. I mean, they're 14-6 to the over at home, 8-4 against the East. Both of those about 7 points per game over the assigned total. Hawks on the road lately, like, have been a little lower scoring for sure. And I don't know how much of that's the matchup, right? Like Miami, Orlando, etc. They've played 4 against the Western Conference this season. And they've averaged 128 a game in those 3-1 to the over. They had some faster matchups against Indy and Washington. Those obviously cruised over. Now, without Trae, that is a concern for sure. But like I said, like, I trust DeJounte to just do what he used to do with the Spurs. Like, he's averaged a solid 25 and 10 without Trae in 3 games this season. They were on pace, certainly, to even beat Philly without Trae. They led 68-62 at half in their second game without him this year. That was no Jalen Johnson. So they're 2-1 without him now after pulling out the win at Miami. Like, they can be competitive here. Bogdanović can come off the bench hot, provide more points than you might expect. And just, like, lastly, looking at this last matchup, the Hawks just were shut down in the second half, which is really strange. At home, the only 39 points in that second half. Kings play better defense on the road. Like, I just don't expect them to have that same kind of sustained defense. I expect it to be a more of an up and down game with Jalen Johnson getting going in transition. That was only Jalen's second game back from injury, by the way, when the Hawks lost by 7 at home. So I think, we just plug in DeJounte into the facilitating Trae role and expect the Hawks to come along for the ride.
Yeah, I do. I definitely do. I mean, the Kings, as we've said, haven't had trouble necessarily scoring the ball, especially at home. So this does trend over. I'm pretty confident this would be like 242 at least if Trae was playing, right? And I don't think we think there's necessarily a 4-point, retraction here for this game just because Trae's missing with the way that both these teams play. They both give up a lot everywhere, whether it's 2-point field goals, 3-point field goals, especially the threes. Probably going to see a lot of those rain down, both of them in the top 8 in terms of the amount that they make per game. The Hawks are just giving up a huge percentage. And sometimes you say like, oh, there's variance from 3, so maybe it's an unlucky 3-point percentage against when it's really high and you expect it to regress to the mean. But how many games do we need to watch the Hawks allow 40% from 3 for the other team before we're like, oh, okay, they're just not going to guard the 3-point line. Got it. And Trae being out does increase the defense a bit, I suppose, but I'm still not like thinking that there's going to be incredible perimeter defense being played just because we'll see a bit more DeJounte. We'll see more Bogdan, not exactly a wing defender. Sadiq Bey is just 3-and-3 guy. I don't think there's any D in there, so I'm not really going to call him Sadiq Bey 3-and-D. Right. So I'm with all of that for you. I do like the Hawks to cover because I'm so down on this Kings team right now. But let's not just use what's happened, recently as the only reason to just keep fading the Kings. It could be very much so like a get right game that I don't think they'll necessarily use as like this is the measuring stick because we beat a Hawks team without Trae Young, but it is one that you can use to move forward and propel yourself since they're so well rested. So I'm going to go to Boston and Dallas and talk about under 239.5. Boston has been going under on the road a bit lately. They definitely have a few overs. But that is obviously where they score fewer points is on the road, not compared to the 120 plus that they put up in the Garden. And yeah, they're on a back-to-back, and they haven't necessarily. They're basically even in terms of going over under there when they're on playing on a back-to-back. Especially with this number here, where it's 239.5, and I think that's a bit high for a Dallas team that's also been going under more frequently than you might think at home as of late. Even with Luka in the lineup, like the points per game for this team has dwindled when you see like 108, 118, not quite at the like 122 to 124 mark that they were putting up in the first half of the season when they were also playing a bit faster. Yeah, with Luka back and the way that these teams kind of match up, I don't like they do want to get out and run a bit in terms of the fast break, but that hasn't necessarily been the case at home for Boston or for Dallas, like I said. And Boston's getting back in transition incredibly well and playing pretty good defense on the road as well. Pretty much the same, to be honest, whether they're at home or not, but they're just scoring way more at home and beating teams by double digits there, despite the recent loss, obviously. But I think there's not going to be much in the paint, so it's just going to come back to 3-point variance with these teams. And I don't love betting on them like that, but with Boston having to make that trip and go to Dallas like that with no rest, I do think that the 3-point legs are being a little bit more tired is something that you can bank on for them. Dallas will definitely, I think, slow this game down with Luka back, not necessarily wanting to get into a back and forth with the Celtics, who just have the wings to outwing them, if you will, out athletic them all the way down the floor. Dallas is not their fast break defense is terrible, and that's why I think they just can't afford to like have it get up and down because they just don't get back on defense, and they don't have the bodies and the bigs necessarily to get back on defense. Dante Exum being out is also something that makes me go, okay, yeah, continue to be slower when he's in the second unit. He's the guy pushing the pace and keeping those numbers high for them on the offensive rating. And like I said, the pace with the second unit when he's been controlling that for roughly anywhere from 19 to 22 minutes per game, and we're not going to get that from him if he's doubtful. Like I'm going to believe that he's not playing tonight. So the way that like Dallas is going to push things to the corners and actually defends above the break a bit better, that's where a bit more of the strength of their defense is, believe it or not, because they do hide Kyrie a little bit and they have Luka down low, where they, like I said, they're pushing things to the corners a bit more. Teams are taking a ton of that against them. Boston not necessarily going to keep things above the break. That is where Tatum and company are shooting their threes more than any other team, more so than and neither of these teams have necessarily done a great job of getting to the rack. Even though we've seen Boston shoot so well lately, like I don't know. I would hope Tatum's going to drive. Like I guess as the Boston fan, like how do you see Boston reacting to this Dallas defense?
Yeah, they did a great job. I mean, their last trip to Dallas a year ago. I mean, Tatum absolutely dominated the game, triple double, and then the other guys kind of lined up. Derek White, et cetera, lined up and held Luka in check. I mean, they didn't have Kyrie as the secondary option there, but that game obviously went way under because they held Dallas to just 95 on the road. Boston in the back-to-back situation you mentioned, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen with them. Like, there's been some crazy. Like they just absolutely smoke the Kings on a back-to-back on the road. They do score a lot against Toronto, but then lately, like shutting down Indiana under, and then of course the Bucks back-to-back where they went way under. So there is a lot of variance here, like you're saying with the threes. So I think there's a lot of wiggle room to get under 240. Like as long as both teams aren't just like hitting a barrage of threes, I don't really think we're getting to 240 here. Because the Celtics do a great job keeping guys off the line too,
Right.
So they're going to make Dallas earn things in the half court.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, and keeping Luka off the line is a big part of that. So completely agree with that. Your second pick.
Yeah. I mean, similar. Speaking of keeping guys off the line and low scoring, I'll take the Cavs -1 Here at Orlando, it's flipped a little bit from +1 to -1 because of the obvious rest advantage here, and I'll just take that obvious rest advantage. Yes, I will because Franz Wagner only played 28 minutes in his return yesterday, and Jamal Mosley was kind of like, we'll see if he can go on a back-to-back, and if he can't go, there's no way you don't want to fade the Magic. Like, we've been on this again. Paolo under his props 6-7 straight now, going way under the 26 and a half he's been assigned. He cannot carry this offense without Franz. Like, Franz is so important for what the Magic do, and they're just also not very good on back-to-backs in general. Even with him, they're 2-6 straight up, scoring 4 points per game fewer, allowing 9.5 more. They're 12-18 as dogs. They allow more free throws on back-to-backs, and this matchup, it's exactly what you would expect, right? Just like a gross rock fight where it's low scoring. And the Magic have shot just 18% from three in their two matchups with Cleveland this year. They actually lost with Paolo dropping 42, so that kind of throws some holes in our fade Paolo along with the Magic theory. And then they managed to win with him dropping just 20, a more balanced effort. I think that's more you look at the Cavs side, which is Garland had a big game. Donnie Mitchell had to play the 1B role. And part of the reason the Cavs have gotten so hot is because Garland's out. And I mean, Darius Garland's a fabulous player. I'm not in any way saying that that he's not a great point guard to have alongside Mitchell, but what it does is streamline your offense. It lets it be the Donovan Mitchell show, which he's used to from his time in Utah, which everybody else, meaning these are 3-point shooters who gravitate around a son that is Donovan Mitchell, right? And it's just the spacing is better without Mobley because you have Strus and Yang out there. Everything just seems to work much. Everybody knows their role a lot better. That's why they've won 7 straight with Donnie posting a 34% usage rate. And his previous 3 against Orlando prior to that loss, he averaged 37 a game with a very high usage rate. And generally, if you look at the game log, when Donnie has a high usage rate, Cleveland wins. That's pretty much where we're at. And then the offense is simple, and then the defense is just elite, like number 1 defense across the board the last 7 here. Doesn't matter who they're playing, doesn't matter what. Like, the one thing they might give up is points off turnovers, and that's the one thing that gave me pause because Orlando does score well off turnovers. But in the half court, I just don't think they're going to have that much success, especially with tired legs on a back-to-back.
Yeah, we don't even know who's going to play for Orlando, and it's possible that you're about to get a ton of value from -1.5 if any of the following: Joe Ingles, Jonathan Isaac, Markelle Fultz, Franz, all these guys who have missed a ton of games before, like basically coming back for the last 2 or so. Why would they play on we don't know that all of them are going to play on a back-to-back, especially old man Joe Ingles and company. A couple of those other guys are young enough, but yeah, Markelle, who's been injured, Fultz, like that. Like, yeah, I don't know that you're going to see that many guys. And if it's just going to be the sort of Paolo, by the way, Goga Batadze was a coach's decision not play last night. Kind of indicates maybe he was making sure that he had a fully rested Goga for tonight. Maybe you don't get some Wendell Carter Jr., who also just came back, right? So this spread could be like -6.5 before this game starts if the injury report for Orlando comes out. And look, I'm not saying you want to completely base a bet on that all the time, but the -1.5 is good as is and could be like about the best CLV that we'll find on the day. So I'm going to another under as well here, Nate, to close things out. I know I had another my under there in that Mavs Boston game, but I think Memphis and Toronto is probably ripe for another under as well. I don't want to put too much stock. It's 227.5, and I like that. It might drop a little bit. I don't think people are expecting points to come necessarily in this one. I don't really have a strong feeling about the cover. I would lean Toronto, to be honest with you. If anything, I don't trust this Memphis team at all whatsoever. But I don't really trust Toronto to score that well yet either. I don't think that they're meshing fully as a team, and we'll see how that goes. But in the last 3, I really thought there was a good amount that you could sort of glean from this game, from this matchup, because the last 3 games have been so similarly sort of compartmentalized for these teams, right? Like, everybody's been out for Memphis for 3 games, and Toronto has had Bruce Brown and no Pascal for 3 games now. And what you see, as small of a sample size as it is, we can at least use something from it. And they're both 1 and 2. Memphis is scoring 105 a game, allowing 117. Toronto's at 1 and 2, 110 a game, scoring 110 a game, allowing 113. They're both bottom of the league in terms of their field goal percentage. They're both shooting mostly threes. We have no Pirtle in, and we really don't have any strong attacking the basket, power forward for Toronto at this point. There's a lot of RJ hoping that his field goal percentage stays high to keep their RJ's been shooting 51% from the field on his 15 shots per game. I mean, come on, man. I'm a Knicks fan, and I'm going to tell you right now that is not going to be the norm for RJ is for him to shoot that well. He's getting 9 free throws a game and only making 4.5 of them, which is also weird. He's better than that, but he's also not a 9 free throw attempt a game guy, but he is the Pascal now. He's the guy who's banging bodies, trying to get the sort of little 6-footer off the glass that Pascal does every time he goes towards the rim using the backboards. That's been RJ's MO as well. Is, like I said, attacking a bit more, which is wild. That's why I like some Scotty Barnes assists in this game, but the threes need to hit is the point. Everybody else besides RJ is trying to shoot threes. Even Scotty Barnes, who needs to stop, is shooting a ton of threes. Memphis is shooting the most threes. They're missing a ton of them as well, but they're making the 6th most because they're shooting 43.5 of them per game at this point, because that's really the offense is Triple J shoots from deep, or they run a little bit of something else. Maybe Santi Aldama shoots from deep. That's the Memphis offense at this point. There's really not much attacking going on in any way, shape, or form, because obviously that was just Ja's job. And now it's Triple J running your offense, shooting 23.5 times a game. I'll go ahead and continue to hit an under. It's just all gross all around. And Toronto's 3-point defense has been awesome. So that's also why I kind of lean Toronto is that's where they don't have any down low defense. They just have a bunch of wings, even more so now than they ever did. Because I don't know what you consider Chris Boucher, but it's certainly not a rim protector, right? It's just the 3-point line that they do well.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good matchup for Triple J, and
True.
I mean, he might see a little bit more run here because I know you're scared to take the under on Triple J because of the volume shooting, but yeah, I don't see him having a lot of success against the Raptors, who kind of been bullied because they let Siakam and Precious Achua go in these trades, and now they have this void at power forward, and they've been bullied by some stronger guys. But Triple J is not that. He's a finesse guy who you can put a Boucher on, and yeah, he's only 5 for 17 from deep his last 3 against the Raptors, not really having great offensive output. So definitely a correlation with him not being hot and the Grizzlies having another terrible offensive game because they don't have much else.
Yeah, and 26.5 points is crazy. I'm going to put that. I'm going under for Triple J. All right, we'll talk about that here in player props. Make sure that you like and subscribe so you can check that video out as well and not miss any of these videos. We're bringing you each and every weekday this season. Until we see you next, happy betting.